Hello folks, and welcome out to the Single Player Podcast. I'm your one and only host, I'm 16-Bit, and I got a good show for you this week. We'll be talking about the continuing controversy regarding Blizzard, as well as Okami possibly making a return, and Analogue having a new handheld, plus more. So sit back, relax, enjoy the show, and we'll be right back after this. Alright folks, and we're back, and this next segment is going to be almost entirely Blizzard, because the thing is that there was a lot of stuff that I wasn't able to get to last week, plus there's a lot more stuff that's come out since then. So first and foremost, Epic Games has come out and said that they support the right of free speech. The news came out of an article by The Verge where they had a talk with a spokesperson from Epic, and they released a statement, and then Tim Sweeney got on Twitter and he basically retweeted the exact same thing that they said, and I quote, "Epic supports everyone's right to express their views on politics and human rights. We wouldn't ban or punish a Fortnite player or content creator for speaking on these topics." Now, that sounds all nice and dandy, but I highly doubt they'd actually follow through with that. Because here's the thing. 40% of Epic is owned by Tencent, the same company that owns 10% of Activision Blizzard. So don't tell me that if someone says free Hong Kong during a Fortnite champion that they're not going to do anything about it. They're going to do something. In fact, I guarantee you they'll probably go even further than Blizzard did. It's just like, come on, I'll tell you what this is. This is nothing more than a marketing ploy, because Blizzard and Epic are technically competitors. So what is Epic going to do? They're seeing that Blizzard right now their competitor is getting a lot of crap. So they basically try to morally grandstand. They tried to say, "Oh no, we totally support freedom of speech. You can state any sort of opinion on human rights abuses and politics, and we'll totally be behind it." Wait until that actually happens. I guarantee you they're not going to follow through with it. But of course, Epic wasn't the only one to put out a statement. Riot also put out a statement as well. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but in essence, what it says is that they've asked all their pro players and casters to refrain from talking about sensitive topics. Of course, that's just a nice way of saying don't talk about the Hong Kong protests. And the thing is, we know exactly why they did that. Because unlike Epic or Activision Blizzard, where only a small portion of those companies are owned by Tencent, Riot is 100% owned by Tencent. They are a Chinese-owned company. So, of course, they're going to put out something that basically says, do not talk about Hong Kong at all. I'm not surprised that they actually do that they actually put this statement out, because they have to put something out that will not upset their Chinese communist overlords. Of course, like I said, they weren't the only ones as well. ESL, which is they're an esports league, they put out a statement basically saying that they've asked all their employees not to discuss Hong Kong. Now, they're not owned by any Chinese company. But what's interesting about this is that apparently it does sort of coincide with the fact that they made a recent deal at the end of September. Apparently, they made a deal with, where is it? Here we go. Chinese streaming service Huya. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Well, Huya is backed by, guess who? Tencent. And as it turns out, they've made a partnership with ESL to stream their matches in China. As in return, Huya gave ESL $30 million. So, of course, for that amount of money, ESL is going to keep their mouth shut. I mean, is anyone really surprised by that? Really? I'm not. I'm really not. At this point, we've seen that American companies or just companies outside of China are willing to keep their mouths shut as long as they're getting paid by China, you know? But what's interesting about this whole thing is how much of an effect it's had on Activision Blizzard. Ever since they put out that statement, it's just, things have not been very well for them. Case in point, on October 16th, they were actually supposed to have a launch event at Nintendo World in New York City for Overwatch. Well, they canceled it. Just, I think it was like a few days ago, they actually just like came out and said, oh yeah, by the way, it's canceled. That's it. Didn't give a reason. But it's been speculated that it's because they're afraid of protests, which I'm not surprised. There definitely would be people protesting them outside. And they want to avoid that as much as possible. Really makes you wonder if they're going to cancel a New York City event, just a small event, because they're afraid of protesters. It's like, well, how are they going to handle BlizzCon? You know people are going to go there to protest them. You know it's going to happen. You know, no matter what Blizzard tries to do, the only way there's going to be people there, and it seems like the only way that they'll ever actually be able to like stop any protests is by outright canceling BlizzCon. But I highly doubt they'd actually go that far. What's also interesting is that even U.S. politicians have weighed in on this whole thing. It seems two U.S. senators, Senator Ron Wyden and Senator Marco Rubio, have both weighed in on the topic, on the controversy. Wyden wrote on Twitter, Blizzard shows it is willing to humiliate itself to please the Chinese Communist Party. No American company should censor calls for freedom to make a quick buck. And Senator Rubio also stated, recognize what's happening here. People who don't live in China must either self-censor or face dismissal and suspensions. China using access to market as leverage to crush free speech globally. Implications of this will be felt long after everyone in the U.S. politics today is gone. It's also come out that they've sent a letter to Bobby Kotick himself condemning Blizzard's actions in this entire thing. And what's interesting is that it's actually signed by several representatives, including Mike Gallagher, Tom Malinowski, and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Now, I'm not going to read the letter. Instead, I'll probably leave a link in the description. But it is fairly long, and like I said, it condemns their actions. While I don't like the idea of politicians getting involved in video games, I will say this. I do like that they're putting pressure on Blizzard. And that's basically the best word for it. And that's what Blizzard needs right now. They need pressure, not just from politicians, but gamers as well. And they're feeling it. You can definitely tell that they're feeling the pressure from the whole thing. And honestly, we should never let it up. We should keep going. Always put pressure on Blizzard. Never let them stop thinking for a minute that they can continue doing business with China. In fact, we should make Blizzard into an example to other companies that we will not tolerate you bending a knee to a bunch of goddamn communists. Anyway, folks, I'm going to take a short break and we'll be right back after this. All right, folks, and we're back. And now that I got all the Blizzard crap out of the way, let's talk about something really awesome. Apparently, Okami may be coming back. The news came out from Ikumi Nakamura. She apparently visited Platinum Games and posted a photo of her and Hideki Kamiya saying, and I quote, "Okami is going to be back. We want to make Okami sequel, and fans are looking forward to it, too. You guys want to see Kamiya's Okami again, right, everyone? I want to work on it, too. We want to make Okami again." And I am totally up for this. I think that this is freaking awesome if they actually do it. Because Okami was a phenomenal game. It was one of those games that just sort of... It was artistically beautiful, but also had some really solid gameplay behind it. And a lot of that, again, is because it was directed by Hideki Kamiya. In fact, I think it was one of his last games for Capcom. Because after that, he basically... Because after Capcom closed down Clover Studio, he basically left and walked away and started doing his own thing at Platinum. And that's another thing. Like, Okami was like one of the last games released by Clover. Oh man, Clover was good. They made a lot of really good stuff. They did Beautiful Joe, like all the Beautiful Joe games, and they did God Hand as well. And I think God Hand was their last one, and it was a real shame when Capcom shut them down because they had a lot of really good stuff. But I think it was the sales of the games weren't really that good, so Capcom just shut them down. I just hope that they actually get it done, and it seems that they might, because recently Capcom released the Integrated Annual Report, and in it they mention bringing back dormant IPs. For example, on page 33 it says, and I quote, "For the time being, we are placing a priority on maximizing the revenue from current core IP. We are also actively looking to utilize dormant IP." And then later on they mention it again. They say, "Finally, for we will revive dormant intellectual properties for which we have not recently released new titles by increasing the number of our developers." So I'm kind of hoping that this means that Capcom will be more willing to make a Okami sequel. Like there was a point where like Capcom did not want to make any new IPs, or they didn't want like to make or to continue any like dormant IPs. It seemed like all they wanted to do was like Resident Evil and Street Fighter, and that was it. In fact, now that I think about it, there was a point in Capcom's history where they outright refused to make any new IPs. Their entire attitude was everything had to be either a sequel or a remake. And to get Dead Rising and Lost Planet made, what Kenji Inafune did was he put both games in a prototype state, and then he ballooned their budget to like 200 or 400%, so that Capcom then had to go in full development with both games. And eventually they did, and well, it ended up very well for them. So here's hoping that Capcom finally greenlights a sequel to Okami. Anyway, next topic. Okay, so this next one's pretty interesting. Tokyo Mirage Sessions FE Encore is coming out in January, and already it seems that some Japanese gamers aren't exactly happy with it because it's based off of the Western version, not the original Japanese. Apparently, fans had speculated about this when the initial trailer dropped, and then the website had screenshots that looked more closely to the Western version. And then the website just outright confirmed it when they said, and I quote, "This work is a universal specification that adds new elements based on the Western version of Tokyo Mirage Sessions." So essentially, the Japanese gamers are getting a taste of the sort of censorship that Western gamers get when it comes to these sort of games. And honestly, it kind of annoys, that really annoys me. Because the thing about like Japan is that they don't have to deal with this sort of crap. We have to deal with it because we have localizers who feel like they have to protect everyone's sensibilities. You see, this is something that kind of annoys me about Nintendo, is that they have no problem with third-party games being uncensored on their platform. And I have no problem with that either. I think that's good. But when it comes to their first-party games, suddenly they feel they have to censor them like crazy. That they have to change every little bit. And the fact that now the Japanese gamers are going to have to deal with that crap, I think that's complete bullshit. Especially since, again, it's based off of the friggin' Nintendo Treehouse localization. And that's a huge problem because Nintendo Treehouse has been an absolute pain in the ass for the past several years. They've been responsible for all the censorship in every single Fire Emblem game released in the past several years. They were the ones who removed that entire head patting minigame from Fates, as well as numerous other subplots and support conversations. It just gets ridiculous, you know? The thing that gets me though is that I would have never expected Nintendo to release a censored Western version in Japan, because that's something like I would have expected Sony to do, because that's what they've been doing for the past several years, and that's a whole rant in and of itself. But anyway, there actually is some good news about this. Nintendo issued a full apology to fans and are now offering a refund to anyone who pre-ordered the game. So, hey, at least there's that. You don't get that in some companies. If you don't like that they censored a game, usually their attitude is tough shit, buy it or don't. And so at least Nintendo is hearing fans' concerns and is like, okay, we won't do this shit again. We'll offer you a full refund. So there's at least that. Anyway, next topic. Okay, this next one's actually pretty neat. The Internet Archive has officially announced that they've added 2,500 DOS games to their site. That's right, you can now play over 2,500 different DOS games all on your internet browser. So you don't have to download anything. You don't need to use DOSBox or anything like that. It just automatically loads onto their site and that's it. And I think that's actually pretty cool. I've used the Internet Archive numerous times, mostly to download public domain movies, as well as to find old YouTube videos, because you could find quite a lot of cool stuff on there. I found old Screwtax stuff on there quite a lot, and it's really awesome. What's really neat about it is, though, is like I said, you can just play it in your browser. You don't need to download anything. You don't need to burn it into a floppy disk or a CD. You can just play it right there on your internet browser. And I think that's really friggin' cool. The thing about DOS games is that it's not like what it is today. Back then, if you put out a game, it would be sold for maybe 6 months, and then after that, no one gave a crap about it. Nowadays, if you let's say, for example, you made an indie game 10 years ago and you put it on Steam, most likely it's still available on Steam and people are still buying and playing with it, you know? So I see this as a way for a lot of these old games to find a new lease on life and to introduce people to games that, hey, maybe they've never actually played before and maybe they'll actually really enjoy. Now, more than likely, they don't have every DOS game on there, but the cool thing is they do have Doom shareware fully playable. So I highly recommend you go check it out. It's archive.org and it's pretty awesome. So anyway, folks, I'm going to take a short break and we'll be right back after this. All right, folks, and we're back. And this next topic is really interesting. It seems that Analogue has announced a new system. Now, for those who don't know who Analogue is, they're a company that mostly makes clone systems, but we're not talking like really shitty clones. We're talking high quality clones, like really, really good stuff. Mostly using FPGAs, and the output is absolutely amazing on these things. Their previous work includes the Analogue NT, the NT Mini, the Super NT, and the Mega SG. Well, this new system is called the Analogue Pocket, and it fully supports all Game Boy, Game Boy Color, and Game Boy Advance games, as well as Game Gear, Neo Geo Pocket Color, and Atari Lynx. They also said that there's going to be more as well, but none of those have been specified yet. What's really cool about it is, much like their previous systems, it uses a dedicated FPGA, but it also comes with Nanoloop, which is a program that allows you to make your own chiptunes, which I think that's a really neat addition to it. The system will also include a 3.5-inch 615 ppi LCD screen with a 1660 by 1440 resolution, and it also comes with a dock that allows you to play your games on your television. So it works very much like the Switch, and it fully supports all 8-bit controllers. So for example, I have my SN30 Pro right over here, so I could basically connect it to that and play it through that. I think this is a really neat idea. I mean, there really aren't that many avenues to play a lot of these games unless you own the hardware itself, or maybe, for example, you own a Game Boy player. But I think that's really cool that they're actually putting out something that could play a lot of these old handheld games. They said here it's going to come out in 2020 for $200. So I'm kind of looking forward to it. I'm actually sort of considering getting one my own because I think it's really neat. And it comes in 2 colors, white and black. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Anyway, next topic. Okay, so this next one isn't actually a topic, but rather it's a new segment I'm introducing to the show called Question of the Week. Now, this was something I used to do many years ago on YouTube, but because of my own laziness, I never did it as a weekly thing. It was maybe only once a month, and that was really it. But I thought, you know what, since I'm doing the show and I'm keeping up with it, why not bring it back as its own segment? So here's how it works. I will present a question, and then you guys, put out your answers, and then next week, I'll read them out and sort of give my thoughts and all that kind of stuff. Now, I put a post about it on Gab just sort of as an experiment to see if I would get any responses, and I actually did. The question I put out was, what do you think Blizzard should do to win back gamers? And the response I got was from Nephilion. He wrote, announce Warcraft 4. Now, I would love to have Warcraft 4, but I'm not sure if it's really enough to sort of as an apology for sort of the crap they've been pulling with Hong Kong, and as well as the numerous other crap they've pulled over the years. And even then, even if they did announce Warcraft 4, there's no guarantee that it'll be even as good as Warcraft 3. Like, me personally, I think that Warcraft 3 is the absolute height of the entire series. Like, that's the best game in the entire Warcraft franchise. And I just think that they will never be able to top it ever again. Anyway, this week's question, of course, has to deal with Capcom, with their recent announcement that they're interested in revitalizing old IPs. Which Capcom franchise would you like to see make a return? Personally, I'd like to see Darkstalkers and Power Stone make a return, as well as Mega Man Legends, because I'm still pissed about them canceling Mega Man Legends 3. So anyway, please leave your answers below and I'll read them on the show next week. And I'm going to take a short break. We'll be right back after this. right, folks, and that's it for this week. I want to thank you all for listening. Remember, you can listen to the show on BitChute and YouTube, as well as follow me on Twitter and Gab. Links are in the description. So anyway, I'll see you all next week. And remember that video games will never die.